Welcome to the Mayo Clinic Human Optimization Project, where we're creating the blueprint to help you become the best human you can be so you can give your gifts back to the world. I'm your guide and fellow optimizer, Christopher Camp. We're all busy and have a lot of tasks that we need to complete, and those tasks need to be accomplished somewhere. So whether you're working at home, in an office, or on the road, your physical surroundings play a surprisingly large role in how you do your work, how much you get done, and the level of quality of that work. So in this episode, we're going to talk about some of the science behind how your surroundings impact you and what you can do to optimize them. Accordingly, the title of this session is How Your Physical Surroundings Are Impacting Your Productivity. Our expert guest joining us today is Dennis Dolan, and Dennis serves as Chief Financial Officer of Mayo Clinic. Prior to joining Mayo Clinic in 2017, Dennis held the same position at Banner Health, an integrated healthcare delivery system in Phoenix, after serving in several other executive positions from its inception in 1999. Mr. Dolan has served or is currently serving on the boards of a number of different companies from all walks of life. Some of these include Envision AZ, Think Bank, Greater MSP, the Ronald McDonald House, Sonora Quest Laboratories, Spirit in the Desert Retreat Center, the University of Arizona Health Plan, and many more. He is the outgoing chair of the Healthcare Financial Management Association National Board. So he's an incredibly productive human, and he's done it in a number of different settings and environments. So we're going to discuss what he's taken from each of these environments and put it all together to help you optimize your own space for maximal productivity and peace. Well, Dennis, welcome to the program, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Good. So we always like to keep things organized around here, so we'll break this up into three main sections.
Okay.
And we have a big question that headlines each of those sections. So our first section and our first big question is going to be, how do our physical and mental surroundings influence our productivity? The second is, what common obstacles keep people from creating productive environments, and what is secretly sabotaging our productivity? And then in the last section, we'll try to get into some practical solutions. So the last question is, what practical strategies can anyone apply to optimize their physical and mental spaces for sustained high performance?
Great questions.
Sound like a good lineup for you?
Sounds like a great lineup of questions.
All right, let's tackle it. Yeah. Then. We got a lot to talk about here, so we'll dive right in. So in our first section, we're going to talk about kind of how our physical and mental surroundings influence our productivity. So first, let's start with definitions. How would you define an optimized environment for productivity? What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, no. So I would think when I think about this, I think we're all individuals, right? So everybody's got a way of working and things that irritate us and things that distract us, and so it's got to be an individualized approach. And so think about the things that prevent you from being entirely focused while you're at work on the problems, the challenges, the assignments that you've got. And so for me, it's I need quiet because I've got to be able to focus. And particularly things that require thoughtful consideration. You can all answer an email, a perfunctory email, and yes, click. Mm-hmm. But some challenges require some thoughts, some discernment, and I absolutely need quiet for focus and being able to do that. We also need privacy, right? Because not everything we handle at work is going to be subject for public consumption.
Mm-hmm.
We're either going to be on the receiving or sometimes the giving end, or sometimes a team based, maybe a reset or a coaching exercise that does require some privacy, and I think that's important as well. I do think again, we're all different, but I think an environment that provides some bit of respite or calming or rejuvenation during the day or during the week is also helpful. So if I'm not a plant person, but if you like plants, great. If you like, soft music or the ability to turn it on, that's all well and good. Two really important things for me, being proximate to colleagues that I'm collaborating with, really, really important. I can't in my role. I have the privilege of working with Mayo Clinic's CEO and his administrative partner, Christina Zorn, and my office happens to sit between the two of them. And the amount of work that we can get done just by physical proximity is just frankly amazing. And maybe the most important work we do is just the hallway conversations. And then the last I would probably say is, you've got to create, particularly with hybrid roles and this work from home versus work from the office, particularly if you're at home, that line of demarcation between I'm at work and I'm at home or I'm on my own time. I think that's really important. So, setting up your laptop at the kitchen table, maybe there's no other alternative, but I would think I would try to move that along towards a much more of a sequestered kind of environment.
Designated space.
Yeah, designated space. Yeah.
So in that, I'm hearing you say probably the most important thing I think to take from that is that this has to be individualized to the person.
Completely. Yes, absolutely.
And that has to be to the person themselves, probably to the type of work that they're trying to do, whether this is you're doing something fun at home versus you're slogging it out at the office, or you're a hybrid or remote worker. And also there's a lot of intentionality behind what you just said too. So you mentioned, at times you need privacy, other times you need close proximity to people. So it's something that there isn't one right answer for everybody.
I completely agree.
And there may not just be one right way to do it for the individual. At times you may need a little bit different setup or different access. Maybe, sometimes you need people to be away from you so you can lock in. Other times you need quick access to those individuals to be productive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
No, absolutely. And that's reciprocal, right? Because even though I've got a door or sliding glass door on my office, I have to be open to people interrupting me. Mm-hmm. And so, and vice versa, others have got to be willing to let me interrupt them for an urgent or something that has to be decided quickly. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about why this is so important.
Sure.
What are some of the whys behind optimizing your physical and mental spaces for productivity?
I've yet to meet, having been in professional practice for 40 years or almost 40 years, I've yet to meet an individual who's not geared to be successful in what they do. Everybody wants to succeed. And if you're trying to succeed but are being hindered by, or held back by, a sort of an imperfect environment in which to work, I think you're sub-optimizing. And so I think that's why it's important is you should bring the tools with you. An environment is one of those tools to be your best every single day. And if you are sub-optimized in the environment and that you're working in, you're not bringing your best. Mm-hmm. I think that's the important piece.
Mm-hmm. We talk a lot nowadays about having grit and tenacity and being able to lock in and do deep work. And I think all of those things are great. And we all need to be good at that and probably all need to be a little bit better at doing those things. But it would be nice to save your grit and tenacity for the times you really need it and not have to use it when you shouldn't have to, right? So, sure, you can be, let's say you're in a spot where you need privacy, you need to focus. You can do that and try to block out everything going on around you, but that's going to be stealing some of your mental bandwidth if you're having to use your subconscious to block things out if your environment is not optimized.
Couldn't agree more with that. Is that if you're using tenacity and grit to solve for things that can be solved easily, otherwise, you could redirect that grit and tenacity. There is a finite amount each of us has in terms of grit and tenacity.
Yes,
there's only so much effort you can put into things, and if you're going to use it on things that are maybe easier or otherwise solved, you'll have less in the tank for the stuff that really requires grit and tenacity, like socializing hard decisions or arguing or pressing the point on something that's really important. That all of that takes a tremendous amount of grit and tenacity.
An analogy here that James Clear talks about how we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our habits or our systems. And I think this is sort of similar too. It's like you're not going to rise up to that deep work, focus, grit, tenacity every time. You're going to be tired and you're going to be exhausted. So you're going to fall to your surroundings and to your environment. So if you can set your surroundings and environment up in a way that sort of uplifts you, all right, now I don't have to use my mental effort for that. And I can use my mental effort on the work that I need to be doing or the relationships that I need to be building.
Okay. Absolutely.
When we talk about optimizing your surroundings, let's go through some of the key elements or components that people should be thinking about. I think we're talking about a little bit more than just cleaning up your desk here.
Right.
What are some of the different elements people should be thinking about optimizing?
Well, I think I mentioned some of them before, but for me, And I'll just I'll contrast this with my 26-year-old daughter. She actually prefers a non-quiet space. So she'd rather be listening to music or something in the background or have the television on or whatever when she's working at home. That drives me crazy. And so I think it's obviously individualized is really important here. But I do think there are, and I know one of the hindrances to what we're doing, or to creating the perfect work environment for productivity and just enjoyment purposes is going to be budget and what do you do? But there are I just before I came over this morning, I just did a quick Google search. I mean, there's hundreds of sites that can give you inspiration on what easy things you can do to just make your workspace more conducive to how you like to work. And I think things like color palettes and patterns. Now today, the other element that's come of age over the last 5 or 6 years is the virtual environment. So all of us have to worry about how do we look on camera as we're interacting with colleagues near and far in a virtual realm. As what was behind me? What's the lighting look like? All of those sorts of things. That all matters in terms of the way. If you're distracted by the way you look on camera, you're going to that's one piece of attention that you're not directing towards problems that you're supposed to be solving or challenges you're supposed to be meeting. So in no particular order, I think all of those are important.
Good. And some of the other things we had mentioned earlier, I'm kind of making a list going back through your previous answers too. So, factors to consider will be noise. Some people like it loud, some like it quiet, which, may be okay. Privacy versus connection, or maybe the ability to do both. Appropriate temperature and lighting. Like surprisingly, some of those things, there's actually some decent evidence that shows having an optimal temperature and optimal lighting actually improve productivity and decrease error rates and typing speed and all sorts of different things as well.
Right. Those are all I should have mentioned some of those, but yeah, the absolute temperature is, and honestly, for me, temperature depends on the day. Depends on, in the morning, I'd rather have it a little warmer. In the afternoon, maybe a little cooler to keep me, fresh during the later part of the day. And, one thing we haven't mentioned yet is, the challenge of just being at a job or in a work situation for 8 or 9 or 10 hours a day. And the ability to sort of vary the way you stand up desks, and some colleagues use treadmills underneath while they're on phone calls and all of that. I think if that's something that matters to you or works for you, absolutely. I suffered through the first years of COVID without a stand-up desk, and it drove me crazy. Yeah. And so I finally got a stand-up desk again, and so now I'm up and down every couple of hours. I take one meeting, stand up, and I sit down for the rest, and that matters a tremendous amount.
Oh, that's great. There's a lot of ways to do it too. If you don't have access to a stand-up desk or an under-the-desk treadmill, and I know I did a research fellowship once where I basically spent a year sitting at a desk, without getting up, and didn't have the chance to modify, which is hard for me. I'm a little hyperactive. And so I would take a break at 10 o'clock every morning, and I took the elevator down to the bottom of the building. I was on, the 12th floor, and I would take the stairs back up.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I mean, I'd be out of breath and panting for 15 minutes, but it sort of got the blood flowing. And so there's other creative ways that you can do that. So if you don't have complete control over your surroundings, you can get creative.
Here's another idea. I've got a colleague that loves to do walking meetings. And so, and I'm not talking like walking down the hallway. I'm talking like going outside, walking around several blocks, and a half-hour meeting, that's about a mile. So let's go take a mile walk and have a half-hour meeting. And perfect. That's a great break in the day.
I actually ran across a newsline that I had missed in preparation for this, but I just saw this weekend that a small study that showed that if people will make the effort to personalize their space, it actually increases integrity. And that it showed that if your surroundings are something that you created, particularly if you have pictures of loved ones and family around, that you're more likely to make good, tough decisions, and not only correct decisions, but more sort of virtuous decisions, and less likely to be deceitful too. So I think that there's some other added benefits that we're really starting to learn about in the mental space as well.
It's like a subconscious presence of people that matter to you.
Exactly.
It's like they're watching you.
Yeah, right? I don't want to let this group down that's in this
terrific
photo right here.
I hadn't thought about that.
Let me ask you this. What about other social factors that may play into it? So I'm thinking about this as A lot of people, especially working from home now, have very different setups. Maybe you have kids running around or you don't. Maybe you're single or maybe you have a partner. And how do those things sort of factor in?
Well, I think you've got to make some choice. I mean, there are some lines that are just really too hard to bridge, right? And so if you've got, lots of small children and they're at home all day and your job requires you to work from home, it's maybe not the right fit. I'm fortunate because at the point, hybrid and/or remote work came up. I was already an empty nester and I've got a very understanding spouse and so a space at home where I can do that with privacy and low noise and all of those good things. But I do think we can all flex a bit, but I think there are circumstances that require a little bit too much of a stretch, and you're probably not able to give it your best if you've got too many distractions or interruptions to your day and not strong designated space and boundaries around that. I think those are really too hard. But you're right; they're all kind of. If you're a caregiver and you've got the person you're caring for is has needs that can't be too flexible. You've got to do it every 30 minutes or every 60 minutes. Those are hard, and I don't have a great answer for those except some of those just I think they just sort of make it impossible to be very productive.
Yes,
and hopefully they're fleeting. Hopefully they're temporary, and we can all return to being our best selves, highly productive at work at some point. Yeah.
And you bring up a great point as a caregiver. We're talking about productivity and which increases joy, which is incredibly important. There are some things more important than productivity too. So if you're taking care of a loved one or somebody who's sick or something like that, and that takes precedent in your life, you may have to knowingly sacrifice some productivity here. And that's a knowing and willing sacrifice you're making. But I would just say, just do it thoughtfully, intentionally, and know that you're doing that. And then even within that, say, okay, I have this set of limitations on me that I cannot control. Within those limits, how can I still, make the most of this situation?
Right.
That I can.
And even I would recommend being proactive on that front. Is work with whoever is your supervisor, whoever you're reporting to, and just be honest about the circumstances so that you're not trying to hide anything and say,
yes,
I have some, maybe they're temporary, maybe they weren't always there. And hopefully if you've been a terrific employee and highly productive up to that point, you can reach into that bank of trust and credibility that you've built up over the years and say, look, I've got a temporary situation here where either I need to, de-emphasize the job a little bit or I need just a little bit of space or something. And most organizations, most supervisors life happens, right? And so we can't ignore the fact that in each of our lives there are points of time where we're not going to be at our best, and sometimes it's us, sometimes it's imposed circumstances externally, and I think we all have to work through that.
So that's a great example of talking about the things that are sort of outside of our control. Now let's talk about some of the problems that are inside of our control.
Sure.
So we'll go into our second section of why this is such a struggle for us. So why is it that so many of us tend to cling to clutter and other things, even though we know there's pretty good evidence that shows that it hurts our productivity?
Yeah, it's an interesting piece. I mean, a clutter just happens, isn't it? I mean, it's a species. I think we just we're hoarders. There's to some degree, just at our core, and so it's hard to throw things away. It's hard to put things away. I'll tell you. A quick story for me is when I landed at Mayo Clinic. We had standard office spaces, and we all brought in the stuff that we'd collected over the years, and we put it on shelves and whatever else, and then we redid the executive suite, and so no more offices. We were supposed to rotate through, and we all got flexible workstations. And so now we have lockers. Now there's not very much you can put in a locker. I've got a few tablets and some pens and pencils, and that's about it. And so it was like forced decluttering.
Yes.
And actually, thank you. I mean, whoever was behind it, I owed that a thanks because it is freeing to not have very much stuff at the office, and appreciate that.
Yeah, honestly, for me, this was one of the biggest things. I was prepping for this session. It had a huge impact on me. I tend to be somebody who's relatively organized and orderly, but as I was prepping for this, I realized how little attention span or bandwidth I had. And when I look around at my desk, even if there's just a few items, my mind is constantly vying for attention and fighting.
Right.
And I'm trying to focus on the work at hand, but all of these different things are sort of stealing from my attention when I glance over and I see this or I see this. And I realized my desk, or my office, if it has physical stuff and mess, it basically becomes like a physical to-do list that I can't hide. I look around, and every time I see it, I'm like, oh, I have to file that, or I have to finish that, or I have to do this. And so here I'm trying to work, and it's like all of these different things just taunting me and distracting me, saying, remember, don't forget about us. You still got to do this. And like, not only does that slow you down, but mentally that kind of takes a toll on you a little bit, and it's overwhelming.
Chris, have you found as the medical practice has become much more digital? Certainly, my work has become much more digital. I'm old enough to remember, a big desk with a pile of paper on the left and pirate paper on the right, and there were things that I had to do. Anymore I have almost no paper. It's an email inbox or a digital list of things to do. And I actually think that's in a sense uncluttering as well.
Yes,
I don't have any eyesight or line of sight to clutter. It's all on a screen, but it's
nice. It requires a bit more intentionality because you have to think about, all right, where am I going to put this away virtually? What sort of filing system am I going to use online, and how am I going to do it? So rather than just letting it physically pile up on your desk, that's easy to fall to. It's a default. But so it does require a little bit more intentionality on the front end, but is immensely more helpful on the back end.
Yeah,
so we've absolutely seen it in the medical space for sure.
So
let's talk a little bit about how the mental component to this. We started to do that. I'm wondering, I'd like to talk a little bit about how our kind of multitasking culture or desire to do that or think that we're doing it really good can actually perpetuate this kind of messy mental space for us.
That's a great point. I think there's a fair amount of clinical evidence that says humans really aren't very good multitaskers, right?
Right.
So we can fool ourselves into thinking we're multitasking, but we really aren't. And so I've sort of tried to internalize that. And the only things I multitask are easy things. If I don't, anything that requires, I mentioned, things that require thought or discernment, I can't multitask that. That takes too much attention and mind span. So in my case, the only things I multitask are things that are, somewhat perfunctory or yes, no, whatever. But I do think the fact, and the other thing I would say is that in many of our roles, I suspect you're in the same situation that I am, is that if you're not multitasking, you're falling behind because the pace of work requires you to multitask. And so, and I see it from all of my colleagues. I suspect you see it from most of yours as well, is that, if you're sitting in a meeting, you're probably answering emails, or you're probably checking your text stream or whatever else, and you just have to stay up, right? There are very few times during a day where I've got an hour where nobody needs to get a hold of me.
Right.
And so it's a fact of life. I think you have to manage it thoughtfully and not sacrifice quality and of thought and quality of decision making just in order to stay not behind, right?
You're spot on, 100%. And it's a challenge because I feel like having a messy desk or an office clutters my physical space, and I feel like multitasking clutters my mental space.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's really difficult. And sometimes you can't avoid it, right? The same thing with the physical space. Sometimes people come in, they set stuff down, or I set stuff down. So it is going to get physically messy from time to time, just like it's going to get mentally messy from time to time. But I think the key is try to minimize that the best you can. When it does happen, say, "Ooh, I need to do a cleanup here," whether it's my physical space or my mental space, and say, "All right, how can I get this cleaned up? Put things in boxes, organized, and put on a to-do list that I'll tackle later." So, I think we have to think about not only straightening up physically, but also trying to do that mentally.
Completely agree. The one thing I would say is, from multitasking is that the converse is also true. Is if I'm not multitasking and I am falling behind, that's clutter too, right? And so there is a yield, a dividend of multitasking. Again, if you're in its proper place and for the proper things.
And I think too, along those lines, sort of a bigger version of the mental stress that multitasking causes is that if we're carrying personal stress from different areas of our life into work, or work stress into our personal life, that will really cloud our mental space as well, and can decrease productivity and relationships and things too. So the better job we can do of organizing kind of our mental space and compartmentalizing things, I think the more it'll allow us to stay focused in the moment at hand, whether that's a moment at work or a moment at home,
Right.
with loved ones.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And we all go through those times when there's something that's distracting us. It could be a health issue, it could be a family issue within boundaries. I'm probably maybe too transparent with people that I work with and whatever else, is that, there's something going on. I don't actually mind telling people that. And what I've found is that the net effect of being a bit more transparent on if there's something that's distracting you, or working out, outside the work place that's impairing your ability to be fully productive, your work colleagues will support you. It's a bit of a safety net. It's they're there to help, and they don't want to see you fail either. So I've found that to be a real gift.
Knowing the people that you work with and being in a high trust environment, or a psychologically safe environment, the benefits are immense, because
Right.
then in those spaces you feel comfortable saying, hey, folks, I got this going on at home right now. So
Right.
if I'm a little distracted today, here's what's going on. And feeling comfortable to share that is
bet.
immensely helpful, because then you're going to
bet.
get support, and that allows you to balance that. And I think the opposite is true too. So having a mentally safe space at home where you feel like you can have this conversation.
Right.
You won't believe what happened at work today, and help
Right.
talk me through this.
Right.
And, it can be great
Absolutely.
both ways. And so
Yeah.
it's a huge challenge for people that don't feel like they're in that, have a psychologically safe space at work to do that. And I would encourage you, if you're in that spot, figure out how you can get there, because there's a big benefit to it.
Yeah, no, completely. It might not be your direct supervisor. It might be your colleagues.
Right,
It might be
right.
people that work for you. I don't know.
Carve out your own
Absolutely.
safe space. Yeah,
Right,
great.
right.
You mentioned earlier, you talked a little bit about physically sort of designed spaces and not having your laptop at the kitchen table and those sort of things. So
Right.
what are some of the things that we get wrong with that, and how do we do a better job?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, and you, as a practicing orthopod, I would know this. I mean, ergonomics are really important, right? So, the right chair, the right high desk, the right, do you want to set yourself up so you're looking out a window, so you can see a pastoral scene, or an urban, a street, some activity, whatever? I think all of those things, again, they're individual, but I think they're all considerations. We've talked about lighting, we've talked about noise, we've talked about designated spaces. I think all of those are key. One of the big upgrades for me over the last couple of years was rather than working on a laptop, what is that, a 9x13 screen or whatever it is, just making the investment for a bigger screen monitor. And so if you've got geography and you could blow things up, and that's become more important to me as I've aged, because there's a bit of eye strain that goes from 8 or 9 or 10 hours of looking at a screen for for all of those hours. And so I think it's worth the investment to have a bigger screen and invest in it.
Good. All right, let's slide into our third section here, where we'll talk about some practical strategies. And you set us up nicely for this earlier when you talked about how there are a number of different factors to consider, but it ultimately has to be individualized. So we're not going to give a one size fits all plan here that everybody needs to be doing exactly this, but we'll try to uncover a few, I think, universal truths that are generally helpful for people to do. But ultimately, you need to spend some time thinking about it and design your space, physical and mental space, to help you become the best performer you can be. So can you tell us, if you don't mind, we'll have you be a little bit vulnerable here, and tell us how you design your space and what you've done that's been really helpful. You mentioned sort of larger monitor, which is helpful, but some other things, maybe both in the physical workspace and then maybe at home.
Yeah, so it's a great question. So the things that are important to me, and it does have to be individualized. And I actually think the first thing any of us should do is prioritize. What are the irritants that are most impactful to you not being able to focus and being as good as a you as possible? And for me, it's quiet. It's and so what I've got at least in my home office, and certainly in my office. I've got a door, and I'm able to have that sequestered space and time to focus and be my best. Lighting's important to me. Again, I prefer somewhat subdued lighting. I'm not a bright lights kind of a person, so lighting's important. I have to have some ability to stretch, walk around, do something like that, and so I've arranged to have the stand up desk and do all of those sorts of things so that I can be somewhat kinetic during the day. I guess maybe the other thing is I've got to have an ability to do to take a break, and so there's usually some meetings or some part of your day that you could maybe do while you're walking around. Go take a walk, go walk the dog, do something like that. I think that's all part of what I've put into my home office, at least.
Yeah. I've made a lot of mistakes in this area over the years, and I've had chances to iterate. And I've been in different stages of my life too. As a college student that was single, and as a medical student I was married, and then as a resident I was busy, married, had children, and then as a fellow. So I've tried multiple different ways. And I've gotten it wrong a lot. And one of the things I learned too, as a resident, I would often, and we were generally still reading from books made out of paper then.
Of course.
Now it's mostly electronic. But I would, after we'd finished dinner, I'd sit on the couch or somewhere because I was tired from a long day and sit down reading a book. And inevitably, within about 5 to 10 minutes, I'm starting to slouch a little bit. And then all of a sudden, I'm leaning on one elbow. And then in 15 minutes, I'm asleep. Yeah. And I did this sad pattern for years until I finally realized, okay, this doesn't work. I cannot read on a couch during residency. I'm too tired. And so we didn't have, a lot of money or a big house, didn't have room to have an office, designated office space, but I sort of got a small little cheap desk and a table. And I just said, all right, this is going to be my study space. And when I was a fellow, it was in an apartment in New York City. So in one small room, it was our dining room, our living room, and our office. And so my office table was tiny table, tiny chair, literally 3 feet away from the kitchen table, but just having that designated, like space, this is where I sit when I sit here when we're eating dinner as a family. And then when I study, I'm moving over. It's 3 feet over, but when I'm sitting there, and it was immensely helpful because it sent a signal to me, say, okay, I'm in study mode, or I'm in prep mode or work mode. Right. But it also helped my family too. They're like, okay, sitting at the kitchen table, we know we can interrupt him and we're having conversation. If we're sitting there, he's working or studying. And so that kind of helped as well. So having that designated space, it just helped put me in the mindset. Right. And then that sends a good signal to everybody else around it. Now, they know they can still interrupt me if they need to, but it's going to be for, something that's a little bit more important.
Right. We haven't talked much about this, but, another part of, sort of being productive is I think, there's a training aspect here. You can't solve all of the things that might distract you. But with some practice and some training, you can get over some of the things that might distract you. And so I was trying to think of you at a small desk next to the kitchen table and proximate to the kitchen. You were able to make that work. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just evidence that, we as humans can overcome a lot. Mm-hmm. We don't have to be. It's not automatic that this irritates me or this distracts me, so I have to be irritated or distracted. Mm-hmm. We can train ourselves to still be to still be productive.
Absolutely. And it's really helpful to do it in those situations where it's really challenging, because then eventually if you can get yourself to a spot where your setup's a little better, then it becomes much easier.
Oh, absolutely.
Now I'm fortunate I'm in a spot where I actually have a room that is an designated office. And we still know my kids, I have 4 kids that are all wonderful and high energy, a lot of noise in our house, and which is great. But when I'm working, I need quiet. And so they know if I'm in the office and the door is open, they can freely come in and interrupt me. It's no problem. Right. But if I'm locked in or if I'm in a meeting, I close the door. And it's a glass door, so they can still see in. But they know if it's closed, not to bother me unless there's an emergency happening. So it's really helpful. So now even my kids, my youngest son's 6 years old, and he knows that. And so it just makes it easier for everybody.
Absolutely.
And that way I'm not getting frustrated with them for interrupted, and they're not getting frustrated at me because I'm not responding when they think I should be. So the lines are clearly drawn, which is helpul for all of us.
Sounds like you've got the plan. That's
I've messed it up a lot. So it took a while, but working on these things. And it's going to look different for everybody, but just whatever it is, be intentional about it for yourself and tell others, because I think it helps everybody. Right. So what are some of the positive impacts I can expect on productivity if I optimize my space and look at these different factors that you've mentioned?
Well, obviously if we're fully present and fully engaged more of the day, we should see greater throughput, should see, maybe higher quality of decisions, maybe fewer mistakes. It depends on what your work output is. Obviously, if you're say in the medical field working with patients and their balances and things, can you touch more accounts and get patients to the end of that financial consideration faster? Terrific. Can you handle fair more adjudications of working with insurance companies and figure that out for patients faster? All good. If you're putting documents together for executive decision making, are they put together thoughtfully? Are they understandable? All of those sorts of things. There's so many nuances. There's so many dividends that come from being highly productive. I guess one way to say it is are we reducing the amount of rework that somebody that follows you has to do? I mean, I think that's probably one of the main dividends of just being fully engaged, fully prepared, fully there all the time.
Yeah. And all of those things you mentioned, not only are they going to make you more productive and you get more work done and higher quality work, but when you make more progress and do things that you're proud of, that's going to increase your own joy and satisfaction in what you're doing. So it's going to decrease your burnout risk. It's going to increase your satisfaction, improve retention rates, all of those sort of things. And one of the things that I think people often don't recognize is that increased productivity is not just about doing more to the level that you become exhausted, but if you do more in an effective way, you can actually do more and feel less exhausted by it. And so you're doing higher quality work, you're producing at a higher level, but you're using less energy to do it because you did it efficiently.
Absolutely.
So then when you leave at the end of the day, you still have something left in the tank to go spend with your family and friends and loved ones and things.
I know very early in my career, I was complaining to my boss at the time that I was working too hard. And he had very good advice to me. He said, well, that's not really my problem. Maybe it's your problem. Is that you're not very efficient at what you're doing. And I thought that was a really good way to set a 20-something kid on his way to a better future. Is that that's not my supervisor's problem. I've got to figure it out, right?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's help folks get started with this. So if we think about a practical approach to how you do it, and what I would like our audience to do is sort of think about if I'm assessing myself to say, am I doing well at this or not? Think about it as two separate questions. Number one is, how is my physical space? Is that optimized using all the factors you've mentioned today? Is my physical space? And then secondly, is my mental space optimized? So am I able to focus? Have I eliminated taken care of the mental distractions? And so ask yourself on those two levels, what you're doing well, what you're not doing well. And I think if you had to start with one of those two, cleaning up your mental space or your physical space, ultimately, it's up to you. I would encourage you to look to the physical space first, just because I think it's easier. But we all know how to kind of do that. It's a little more. Sometimes the mental space is a little bit more to unpack there, and that can be a little more challenging. You may not have as much control. So I would encourage people assess both physical and mental space, but maybe start with the physical space because I think that's going to be a little bit more straightforward. So how would you recommend somebody go about sort of assessing and optimizing their physical space? What are some key elements they need to look at and change?
Yeah, so I think first of all, again, back to the theme that we started with is it's all individual, right? Mm-hmm. So I'd suggest that you prioritize first. What's standing in your way to the greatest degree or with the greatest impact, and prioritize that first. But I fully endorse your perspective of focusing on the physical space first and the mental space. I think focusing on the physical space, particularly once if you have some success at creating a better physical space, that helps the mental side, right?
100%.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if the reverse is true, but I know that flows that way. So I think that's important. I do think, once you prioritize, what's the biggest irritation or impact on from the physical side? It's probably some of those things like quiet, ambience, lighting. The tools that you've got, size of monitor, what kind of keyboard you're working with, all of those sorts of things. Maybe it's things like proximity, a little bit harder to work on because that requires somebody outside of you to work on it. But I do think all of those are pretty important. That's where I would start. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And I do agree with you. I think that once your physical space is where it needs to be, then it makes it easier to because in reality, your physical space being cluttered is one of the barriers in your mental side, right? Because that's your physical to-do list is all this junk sitting around you. So I think if you do that, you sort of get a twofer. It sort of helps in both areas as well.
Agreed.
Okay. Perfect. And then this is harder, but if we start to talk about an approach to once folks get the mental or the physical space optimized, how do they approach the mental space? This I think is really complicated, but I think you will have had your first success in cleaning up the physical space. Now, what do you do to kind of clean up the mental space?
Yeah, no. And again, everybody's different. If I felt there were some mental, and there probably are, and I'm just not aware of it, right? But if there are mental barriers to me being my best self at work, I think those are more easily identified through conversation or with a coach, with a helping aid. I think we as humans all probably over-interpret our ability to self-diagnose.
Yes.
And so I would engage, whether it's, full therapy or a mental health coach or something like that. Maybe it's just a work coach or a work-life coach. What is there that's prohibiting me or preventing me from being my best self and as highly productive as I can be? So that's where I would go next. Is let's find a coach.
That's excellent. And I think even if you don't have access to a coach, you don't want to get one. You can start with a family member, loved one, coworker, supervisor, somebody. But it is helpful to get an objective set of eyes in to help look at that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I mentioned supportive colleagues before. Is that there's work groups are also could be useful too. Like what's getting in your way? What are you thinking? How do you feel? And all of that.
Good chance some other people are dealing with the same stuff that you are.
Probably,
right? We're all humans, and we all have different versions of the same
all
stressors
product of the same evolution.
Baggage.
Right?
Exactly.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
All right, excellent. So this has been a tremendous discussion. I really appreciate all you've shared with us. So I'm going to kind of summarize my notes. I've been taking notes as we go here. So I like how you started in the beginning about your approach to this must be individualized. There is no one-size-fits-all plan to this. So be thoughtful and intentional about what you do. Think about this as being both a physical problem as well as a mental problem. So try to organize the physical space and the mental space. And then it's really all about balance, and it's going to be different for everybody. Some are going to like it quiet. Some are going to like it loud. Some want it hot. Some want it cold. And it varies between the person and even within the individual. There may be times of your life where you lean towards one way and other times where you lean towards another. Why is this so important? And you said it's because we all want to succeed. And whatever it is you're out there doing, we all want to be good at it and be successful at it. And one of the benefits of this is that this will allow you, if you can get your physical and mental spaces organized, then you can save your grit, focus, and tenacity for the actual work. It's not being stolen to deal with these external factors. You gave us a great list of factors to consider. So in the physical space side, some things to be thinking about are what's the noise? Are you in a spot where you have privacy versus connection? And maybe there's times you need both. Temperature, lighting, the color palettes, and then also personalization. So do you have family photos or your favorite team or region where you're from, and then also minimize the clutter. That clutter is very distracting. Sort of serves as a physical to-do list for you. And then lastly, really be thinking about creating a designated space for work, even if it's a small little tiny chair in the corner. That sends a signal to you of what you're doing, and it sends a signal to others around you. And then I think your advice at the end was great. So I agree. Start with the physical space, and then that will help you on the mental space side. And for the mental space, get some help. Have somebody work with you. So I'm going to give you a chance now to answer our three big questions. Once again, you've done it wonderfully here over the last 45 minutes or so. So we'll go quick hitter answers to these. So our first one, how do our physical and mental surroundings influence productivity?
Well, for all the reasons that we've talked about, and those, it's if you can eliminate distractions or things that take mind share away from the things that you're supposed to be doing, eliminate them one at a time or together, and you'll have more time to spend on the things that you're supposed to be doing.
Great. What common obstacles keep people from creating productive environments, and what is secretly sabotaging our productivity?
Yeah. So, in an office environment, there's the sometimes there's standard office environments. It's hard to customize and individualize it. So there's that. There's always a budget consideration. I guess what things environment costs money, and then there's the family circumstances or the small kids versus empty nesters. Totally different things. I think those are common obstacles that do keep us from optimizing our space and therefore being the best we can be.
Good. And this last one, I feel like we've answered a couple times, but let's do it again. What practical strategies can anyone apply to optimize their physical and mental spaces for sustained high performance?
Yeah, first, I think we agreed that let's start on the physical space piece and start by prioritizing what irritates you, what impacts your productivity the most, or your ability to focus on the challenges they face. So prioritize first, and use the resources that are available to you. There's infinite amounts of inspiration you can get from the internet and whatever else, websites that'll serve this. And then on the mental health side, we talked a lot about engaging family members, coworkers, coaches, whatever, to help you work through those things, or at least identify the things that are maybe there as barriers.
Tremendous. You've set us up perfectly for our challenge here. So at the end, we always sort of issue a challenge or a call to action. We're pushing people towards action. Learning about all this stuff is wonderful. The data is terrific and it's very compelling. But if you don't actually make some changes in your life, it's all for naught. Doesn't matter.
Right.
So ultimately, we want to help people get the first win in this. And so based on what you've told us, the challenge for today is, number one, take inventory of your physical workspace. Don't even worry about the mental side yet. We'll save that for later. Just take inventory of your physical space. And you can choose from the list of things that Dennis gave us here. So just pick one of these things and ask yourself, is it optimized for me? And if not, then optimize it. So that list, again, noise, your privacy versus connection. What's the temperature? What's the light and the color? Your personalization of your space, getting rid of the clutter, and then make sure that space is designated for work. So just pick one of those things. Don't have to do them all at once. Just pick one and then fix that and then move on to the next one. Just slowly work your way down the list. And then once you're starting to feel pretty good about it, then you can switch over to the mental side and take mental inventory. But step one is just to take inventory of your physical space and see where you're at. So that's our challenge for you to help you get the first win in this process. And again, remember, our goal for doing this is not just to make you a more productive person, but when you are more productive, you're increasing your output while decreasing the amount of effort or energy too. So you're going to have more joy because you're going to have a lot of progress, and then you're going to have more energy left in the tank to go do the things that you want to be doing. So Dennis, thank you so much for joining us today and walking us through this session. Really appreciate having you.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for the invitation. This is fun.
You got it. So our session today was titled How Your Physical Surroundings Are Impacting Your Productivity. We've given you some great tips. I hope you can put them in action and make a big difference in your life. So, and remember, to our audience, to live intentionally, consistently better. Keep striving to be the best human you can be and never stop optimizing. Thanks for listening to the Mayo Clinic Human Optimization Project. If you like this episode, hit subscribe and leave a review. It helps others find us. Know someone who might benefit? Share the episode with them to join us in our mission to help as many people as possible become the best humans they can be. Have feedback or a topic idea? Email us at optimize@mayo.edu. And be sure to look for us on Instagram, X, and YouTube.
This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be relied upon for medical, professional, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified professional for any questions. The appearance of any guest does not imply an endorsement of them, their employer, or any entity they represent. The views and opinions expressed by the guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Mayo Clinic. Reference to any product, service, or entity is for informational purposes only and does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Mayo Clinic.